Hi class, today we are in Saxon Math Book 4, Lesson 91, and we are going to talk about decimal place value. So we have looked at this before. I just put an example or the place values listed up here with the ones being on the far left, and then we have our decimal point, and then we have tenths. Remember, you're almost spitting on people as you say that. Tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. Okay? So this lesson is mostly about recognizing what digit is in which place value and also naming the place value of specific digits. So I'm going to leave that on the board behind me while we look at a couple examples. Before I do that, I do want to point out that the book likes to use money to teach place value. So we've got our dollar. This is the ones place. We could go up to tens and hundreds, but that's not what we're talking about for today. We are actually going to go down, and we're going to say that a dime is 1/10 of a dollar. So if you're looking at the dimes place, you're looking at tenths, and that's how we write it too. When we write money, let's say we have $4.32. Here we're saying we have 3 dimes because there's a 3 in the tenths place. A penny is 1/100th of a dollar. So the pennies, here we have 2 pennies if we have 32 cents. The pennies are in the hundredths place. So if you look in your book on page 579, they actually show you a picture of something that's in the thousandths place. It's called a mill, and a mill is 1/1000th of a dollar. It's so tiny and insignificant that we don't even have those coins. We don't use thousandths of a dollar. We only go as small as hundredths of a dollar. But the thousandths place would be a mill. Now, if you are with mom and dad and you're going on a trip, you may stop and get some gas. The gas station will write, gosh, that's way too high to be a gas price. It's probably going to get up to be this high pretty soon. But they'll write this, and then they'll have that on the sign, that 9/10. They're talking about mills there. They're talking about 9/10 of a penny, which is 1/1000th of a dollar. And it's the way they make the gas prices look cheaper, where we know that 9/10 is almost the whole thing. So really, if this were the price of gas, you're looking at paying $3.33 per gallon of gas. We're going to get rid of that example, and let's look at a couple of these. So the first one here, I have 12 and 875 thousandths. So I want to say that again because I am still having some students telling me that this is point, and I'll tell you I'm guilty of that sometimes too when I'm trying to write a number or tell somebody a number really quickly, but that is not the correct way to read that. We say 12, when we get to the decimal point, we say the word and. 12 and 875 thousandths. That's what this number is. So my question to you is, which digit is in the tenths place? Look behind me if you need to. The tenths, not tens, tenths. So hopefully you said the 8, because my 8 is the first digit after the decimal point, and that's going to be the tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Okay, the next one says, which digit is in the hundredths place in each of these 2 decimal numbers? So we're looking at the bottom 2 here. I can erase the 12. Which digit is in the hundredths place? So look here, we have 4 and 37 hundredths. The 7 is in the hundredths. We have tenths, hundredths. Here we have 4 and 370 thousandths. Which digit is in the hundredths place? Once again, the 7 is in the hundredths place. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Okay, our next example has us comparing two numbers. So I'm going to write them down so you can see them. We've got 23 and 25 hundredths compared to 23 and 250 thousandths. So take a look at that. They're trying to trick you here. So my recommendation when we're comparing numbers is to start with the biggest digit. In this case, tens, tens. Neither one of these numbers have 100. So we're just going to look at the tens. They're the same, so that doesn't really help us. Then we have ones, ones. Again, they're the same, 3 and 3. Okay, we're going to move on to our tenths. 2 tenths, 2 tenths. They're the same. Moving on to hundredths, 5 hundredths, 5 hundredths. Here we have thousandths, but it's a 0. So here we're looking at 0 thousandths compared to nothing, no thousandths. Well, 0 and nothing, they're the same too. So these two numbers are equal. Even though they're not written exactly the same, because this is a 0, they're the same. You can tack on, let's do this. Let's write 10 and 5 tenths. I can tack on as many zeros here as I want, and I don't change the value of that. Here's what changes the value. As soon as I put a 1 or anything other than a 0 right there, I change the value of that number. But as long as it's zeros to the right of my decimal point, it's the same as if those zeros weren't there. 10 and 5 tenths is the same thing as 10 and 5,000 10,000ths, or as many zeros as I wanted to add. So that's the trick. If you've got zeros at the end of your number after a decimal, then you should look at that and go, it's kind of the same as if the zeros weren't there. All right, the last example has us subtracting decimal numbers, and they write it. Tell me if you can see what's wrong with this problem. They write it like this. So you should say, no, Mrs. Duarte, write it vertically, write it up and down. We don't want to be solving problems like that. That would give me a headache, I think. So I'm going to put 4 and 37 hundredths here. But when I'm subtracting, the same as when I'm adding, I have to line up my decimals. So watch how I write this second number. I'm not just going to write those digits. I'm going to start with my decimal, and I'm going to line it up with my top decimal there. Now I see I have a 1 in the ones place, so I'll fill that in. And then I have a 1, 4, 6 in my tenths, hundredths, and thousandths place. So now I've got my decimal lined up. I've got my digits and my place value lined up. All I'm going to do now is look at that and go, there's nothing there. What number represents nothing? 0. So I can fill a 0 in right there to make that easier to subtract. And remember what I told you, I can put in as many zeros as I want, and it does not change this number. So we're good. I haven't changed it. Now I can do my subtraction. 0 minus 6, can't do it, have to borrow. So 10 minus 6 is 4. 6 minus 4 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. Decimal point, decimal point. Make sure you line up your decimal point in your answer as well. And then 4 minus 1 is 3. So our answer is 3 and 224 thousandths. All right, those are all of our examples. I do have some lesson practice problems that I want to go over with you right now. So our first one gives you this and says, what digit is in the hundredths place? So you don't have to write this down, just go ahead and shout it out at the screen. What digit is in the hundredths place? 7 tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So the 7 is in the hundredths. Same number for question B says which, you know what, they give you another number. They give you that, and they give you 15 and 24 hundredths. And the question says which digit in this is in the same place as the 2 in this number. So which digit up here is in the same place value as the 2 in 15 and 24 hundredths? So you need to recognize the 2. Tell me what place value it's in. The 2 is in the tenths. So then which digit is in the tenths place up here? The 3. You can see I even lined them up for you, so the 3 and the 2 are right on top of each other there. Problem C says name the place value of the 4 in the number 1 and 234 thousandths. What's the place value of the 4? That would be the thousandths place. You got it. Okay, problem D wants to know which of these two numbers are equal. So we give you that one, that one, that one, and that one. So which of those two numbers are equal? Did you say the first one and the second one? That would be correct. These two are equal because this 0 doesn't change the value of the number at all. All right. Our next problem that I'm going to have you practice is a comparison problem. 3 and 25 hundredths compared to 32 and 50 hundredths. Is this greater than, less than, or equal to this number? Tell me what you think. So this is the ones place. This 2 is in the ones place here, but look, here we have a number in the tens place. Tens are greater than ones. We don't have any tens over here. In fact, I could fill in a 0 to say there's 0 tens. So this is going to be the bigger number, which means we would say 3 and 25 hundredths is less than 32 and 5 tenths. All right, the last problem I'm going to give you for today, this one you will need to write down. So I would suggest once I put it up that you pause the video, rewrite the problem, and solve it. Pause right now, try this problem, solve it on your own. Then hit play when you're ready to see the answer. So we want to write it vertically. And after I have my first number, I need to make sure to line up decimals. So I'm going to start with my decimal number. And then I see there's just a 1 here, and then there's a 2, 3, 4 going this way. So my numbers aren't lined up. My decimals are. So I just want to fill in a 0 there so that I can subtract. I have to borrow. 10 minus 4 is 6. 3 minus 3 is 0. 3 minus 2 is 1. And so we have 11 and 106 thousandths. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for you to work on your written practice, which begins on page 581. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.